Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
This is the Slow Poisoner. I come to you from the future with these words of warning.
It's a hot horror planet. 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 Living in science fiction. Past the point of no returning. We got high on gasoline. And we blew the scene.
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 76. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics. Attention comic book fans, Lee's Comics of Mountain View, California has closed. But here's the good news. Lee's Comics eBay store is still going strong with over 10,000 vintage comics, the majority of which are now on sale, for half off. Choose from Lee's huge stock of golden, silver, bronze, and modern age comics, and specializing in Silver Age Marvel titles. You can count on friendly service, accurate grading, and quick, secure shipping backed by a money-back guarantee. To check out Lee's eBay store, go to eBay. Click Advanced Search to the left of the search bar, scroll down to Sellers, and enter Lee's Comics Inc., period. That's LeeScomics Inc., period. Don't forget the period. Lee's Comics is shipping daily with no delays. New items daily. Mention the Fun Ideas Podcast and get a free bonus gift.
Long title, Looking for the Good Times, Examining the Monkey Song One by One, by Michael A. Ventrella and Mark Arnold. A book that examines each song, gives lots of details about each song, and our own personal opinions. You can find this book on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and anywhere where good books are being sold. Our webpage is wordpress.monkeys.com, where you can see many of the songs and give your own opinions of them. And we will be discussing this more on Zilch.
Letters, we get letters. Here are some more recent comments about this podcast. This is from Derek Hibbert about podcast number 73 with Michael Gerber. Great questions. Fascinating answers. Thank you for all your efforts. I've loved The American Bystander since it left the gate. And the art and writing somehow get better and better all the time. And then a person named Logan commented, probably sarcastically, but I'll take it. Awesome video. It was really good. I want to be friends. Other than that, there is more progress on my Disney book and my Mad book and my 4 articles for back issue. Nothing new has been released since last time, but please support this podcast and also buy my other books. Our guest today is a writer and fan of old cartoons and old movies. He's written a book about the animated appearances of the Marx Brothers and of Peter Lorre. Here he is, Matthew Hahn. Okay, on the show today we have Matthew Hahn. How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. Just wanted to find out a little bit about you and your books and what's going on with your life. So I guess I usually start off with tell us a little bit about yourself. And you have a few other interests, but I know you from a couple of books you wrote about animations. So tell us how you got started with that.
I became sort of the de facto authority on Marx Brothers animation, except probably other than Joe Adamson and Robert Bader. And so I had been thinking about doing something with it, making a documentary or something, and then one day I saw on the Bear Manor website, write for us, and I clicked on it, and it said what you had to do, and I sent Ben Omart, the publisher, my book proposal, and he wrote back, and he said, "Oh, I didn't know they made cartoons," and I said, "Oh, yes, they made." He says, "I know of like 2 cartoons," and I said, "Oh no, they made There are dozens of cartoons, and so I wrote a little excerpt and sent it to him, and we corresponded a couple of times, and then he sent me a contract, and this was in July, and he said, okay, have the book ready by Christmas. So I was like, but I did get it done. And the second book, I really didn't intend for this to become a series. Ben now says it's a series, so I guess it's a series. But I was looking around for a subject for a second book, and I was casting kind of a wide net, and I kept running across references to Peter Lorre cartoons, and finally I realized there were just hundreds and hundreds of them, and I thought, well, this is a story that has to be told, and so I did, and now the second book is done, and it will be released in July.
Very cool. Now, I never considered the voice of Peter Lorre as something that would be used so much, but in going through your book, I didn't even think about it until after going through it. I go, oh yeah, it's that voice for Ren and Ren and Stimpy. It's for Boo Berry. It's for Mr. Big on Rocky and Bullwinkle and Flat Top and Morocco Mole and all these different characters. And because I was thinking more along the lines of like what's on the front cover. A caricature of Peter Lorre, and I go, wow, there are like 2 cartoons with that, and then this book turns out to be twice as thick as the Marx Brothers book.
Oh yeah, well, the Warner Brothers cartoon, the one that's on the cover, is Hollywood Steps Out, and that really set the template for the visual and oral portrayals of Lorre that were to come, and Mel Blanc was the first guy to play Peter Lorre, and he was even in sort of I include a proto Lorre tune in my book, which is Porky's Movie Mystery, where he plays Mr. Moto or Mr. Motto in this cartoon, and he just misses imitating Peter Lorre as Porky, as a Japanese guy, as but the Hollywood Steps Out was the first real caricature, and it was the one that really started the ball rolling, and then Paul Frees started doing it, and Stan Freeberg started doing it, and Dawes Butler started doing it, and now everybody does it. There are some cartoons in my book. I try to catch all of these. And there are some cartoons in the book where there are 5-6 actors who have played Peter Lorre at one point or other in their careers.
Now, I don't think it was the case, but you can correct me. I went through the book, but I may have missed it. Peter Lorre never ever voiced an animated cartoon himself. It was always people imitating him.
Yeah, there are some people on the internet who have taken voice tracks from his movies and in at least one case a radio show, and done animations around it. But he never actually voiced any cartoons.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That really wasn't done, and he died in '65, and that was very rare for somebody of his station to be doing cartoons at that point.
Right. And then in your research, or maybe you didn't research this, but I'll find out anyway, did Peter Lorre ever comment or say anything about cartoons or people who imitated him in general? Did he find that positive, or did he resent it, or what? I don't know what his actual attitude was towards them, but I can sort of extrapolate from what he said that he was flattered. Imitation is the sincerest form, and all that. He did say, "I am the most imitated man in nightclubs," and he also said, "All it takes to imitate me is 2 soft-boiled eggs and a bedroom voice." So I think he was.
and of course the ball didn't really start rolling on imitations till after he died with the rise of TV animation, and so he didn't get to see the hundreds and hundreds of cartoons that were inspired by his voice.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because he has an easy voice to do for the most part?
I think it's I think the reason you do any celebrity imitation in cartoons, the Marx Brothers, you have the Marx Brothers on screen. It's just shorthand for this is zaniness.
Mm-hmm.
You have Ed Wynn in a cartoon. It's pretty much the same thing. You have Peter Lorre in a cartoon, and it's like this is evil. It might be evil tinged with comedy because he was of course in all those genres and noir.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's shorthand. I think. I say in the book that what's going to happen. Will people now his career is his posthumous career is almost longer than his life, and what's going to happen? Are people just going to be imitating Ron Paulson 20 years from now?
Oh.
Will they even know what they're? I don't know. I think the voice will live on.
Yeah. Well, I even thought that even as a kid when, I didn't know on a lot of Hanna-Barbera shows and Rankin Bass specials and things like that. And it was typically people like Paul Frees more than anybody. They were imitating a celebrity like somebody like Eric Blore or somebody like that. See, now I know this, but I mean, when I was a kid, I just thought, it's Inspector Fenwick, and he has that kind of slightly effeminate sound to his voice when he talks to George of the Jungle, or whatever, that was the same, the wrong character name, but the same voice. He also did that voice on Dudley Do-Right. That's what I was going to say.
When I was a kid, I didn't even know who Peter Lorre was.
Yeah.
But I would go around and I had two big brothers, and they'd try to boss me around, and I would sarcastically go, "Yes, master. Whatever you say, master." And of course, I had no idea I was doing Peter Lorre. A few years later, when I was like 14, I played Dr. Einstein in Arsenic and Old Lace at our high school, and the director brought in a video. She taped it off of Philadelphia TV, channel 29 or whatever it was. She taped Arsenic and Old Lace. It just happened to be playing during our rehearsal period. She taped it. She brought it into rehearsal, and the VCRs in those days were the size of a small truck.
Right.
And so we sat there and we watched it, and I basically ripped off Peter Lorre for my performance.
Now, was that the first time you saw Peter Lorre in a film?
Was the first,
oh, okay.
Yeah. That was the first time I saw the real Peter Lorre.
Okay. And I assume from doing a book like this that you're a fan of his work in general?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, ever since, like I said, I was a fan before I even knew who he was, and then, ever since I saw him in Arsenic and Old Lace, that was, it was golden from then on.
Yeah. I think for me, the first film I saw with him in it was either 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or
that's a big one for kids.
Or Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. One of those two. Yeah, because they're all roughly around the same time, and they used to play them on television or something like that. And I go, that's the guy? Because I knew the voice, and then I started seeing like those, cheapy Vincent Price horror films like The Raven and those types, where it seems like they had everybody, Boris Karloff and everybody else in those.
Jack Nicholson.
Yes. But I grew to like him as an actor, even though a lot of these actors they struggled with their careers and had to do stuff that was kind of below their level, I think. But just to keep the bills going. And I think like the last film he did, if I'm correct, is the Patsy with Jerry Lewis. So he was doing, straight comedy, at that point.
Right.
But what was I going to ask? One of the things I found fascinating, I said earlier, is like, oh yeah, Ren is Peter Lorre. You pointed out George Harrison on the Beatles cartoons, and I never really thought about that. And now I can't think anything of it. Was that? How did you discover that, or were you just listening to different cartoons for that voice?
I just saw a reference to that somewhere. Now I don't remember where, and I went and I looked at the cartoons, and it's true. When they did the cartoons, they wanted them to appeal to an American audience, so they didn't want to have, they didn't want to have John talking like this, Yeah. And so Paul Frees and the other gentleman whose name Lance something or other.
Percival.
His
Lance
name
Percival.
is Lance Guest.
No, it's Lance Percival.
Lance Percival.
Yeah, Lance Guest was the last Starfighter.
So they just came up with these voices. Paul Frees had his Peter Lorre imitation dusted off and ready to go. So I guess he just went with it.
But now that I know that, it's funny. I've watched those Beatles cartoons dozens of times, and I never really thought about it. I just said, "Well, that's not George's voice." And I know George in interviews. I think it was on the Beatles anthology, was saying, it's like, we didn't really like those cartoons, when they came out, but now they're kind of cute, I guess, so they kind of grew to like him. But I'm sure, if he knew his voice was an imitation of Peter Lorre, he'd probably be like, what? Why? What did I do? Because it doesn't seem like a correct, George isn't really a creepy guy, he's usually kind of more spiritual or something like that, And
he probably has the fewest lines in that cartoon of the four.
I guess they didn't know what to do with it. I know, it was kind of a rush job, as with everything with the early Beatles tie-ins and stuff like that. I know there's a magazine, a Sick magazine, kind of like Mad, and it had Jack Davis cover, and none of the caricatures looked like the real Beatles. And, people say, well, why? How could he draw so badly? And I said he might not have had a photo reference. They did these things so fast, that, he probably said, oh, just put a bunch of hair on, some people and we're done, But anyway.
The four mop tops.
I noticed that there was not as many Looney Tunes in the Peter Lorre book as in the Marx Brothers book. I mean, do you have any reason why or anything? Because like Peter Lorre, I think, was actually signed to Warner Brothers as an actor, as a contract player, and the Marx Brothers weren't. So it's kind of interesting there. Any ideas?
I say in the book that Warner Brothers like to use the people that they had under contract in their cartoons. There are a bunch of George Rafts. There are a bunch of Bogarts, obviously, and a few Cagneys, a lot of Eddie G. Robinsons. But they weren't limited to that, and I guess they had the Laurie character, and they treasured the Laurie character. They brought him back for the feature movie that they made with Bugs and Daffy. Mm-hmm. So he was, and he does appear in more original Warner Brothers cartoons than people like Marvin Martian and Michigan J. Frog.
Yeah.
I don't know why they use the Marx Brothers, other than, like I said, it's a shorthand for zany. Here comes a zany scene.
I just thought it might be off limits because they're either working for Paramount or for MGM or somebody else. But
No.
I know, like in the TV days, they would be kind of like, we can't talk about that. That's on CBS or whatever. It's like,
right.
In the early days of TV, but. I guess not so much the movies, but
Yeah.
overall, for either of your books, how did you find your sources? I mean, do you have a giant collection of cartoons, or did you just put a word out saying, I need to find out every Peter Lorre appearance?
Well, sort of. My starting point was the Lost one, the biography of Peter Lorre, and Cheryl Morris did an appendix, and with all of the posthumous about Peter Lorre's posthumous career, and she included a lot of animation in there, and so that was my starting point. And then once I found, I don't know, you probably found this. Once you start researching something, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Then just these things start coming to you for something. And I don't think it's a mystic, some kind of mystical BS. I think it's just that you're more open to receiving these things.
Right.
And I did put out a call on mostly on Facebook on different groups, and people really came through. A guy on Facebook named Mark Ruman particularly deserves a shout out here. He gave me a lot of titles, and just kept researching it, and I didn't find all of them. I'm doing some research for a new project, and it's sort of next door to this one, and I keep finding Peter Lorre Igors that I missed.
Uh-oh. Well, Volume 2.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you saw Jerry Beck on Stu Showstack's show. He did actually promote your book a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that was very nice, and he did. He came out with a review yesterday or the day before,
and
on Cartoon Research, and so that was very nice of him. I was very happy about that.
And he was a little incredulous. Is like, wow, he's listing every episode of all these shows, But I guess that makes sense if that character stars in every episode of something. But it's still.
Yeah.
Have you personally watched all these episodes and everything for the purposes of the book, or did you just create synopsises if you couldn't actually view it?
I watched everything that is available. There were a few episodes of some cartoons, like oh boy, what's it called? Terrible cartoon. That are that were never put out on video, and so they never ended up on YouTube.
Well, I know the Beatles weren't, and then I mentioned Boo Berry earlier. Was it difficult to track down all the commercials, or did you just do a general
I'm not
sample?
sure I got all of them, but the General Foods or General Mills archives was really of not much help.
Nope.
They don't have it. Like I have nieces who live in Minnesota, and they probably could have gone there, or I could have gone out there and stayed at their house and watched all these commercials, but they don't have them.
Yeah.
The Kellogg's archive was I sent them a query, and at first they were not helpful. There was a David Pruiksma, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name.
Mm-hmm.
He is an animator and a cartoon historian, and he recalled seeing a Rice Krispies commercial with J. Evil Scientist, and then I was going through Facebook, and again these things just come to me, and some other lady was like, I remember a Kellogg's commercial with Rice Krispies commercial with J. Evil Scientist, and I was like, two people remembering the same thing, it's like unknown to each other. That's not the Mandela effect. That's got to be a thing. Yeah. And I wrote to I wrote to Kellogg's, and they were like, yeah, no, we're gonna take a hard pass on this. And I said, and I wrote back and I said, why do you even have archives if not for exactly this reason, to answer a friendly request? And I guess that shamed them into looking.
Yeah.
But they had nothing. But David, a few months ago, came up with the paint guide for the commercial. The commercial still has not been found. So it did exist, or I mean, at least it was on the boards, and I don't know why he would think he saw this commercial as a little kid if it was not made.
Right. I didn't even know those characters even appeared in animation until, I was like reading through your book. I wasn't even thinking about it, because I think a lot of those aren't on home video either, right?
Right.
I was thinking it was only a comic book series, so then I go, I guess they were in animation, but it's like, it seemed very, very limited, from what I can remember, but still a lot of Hanna-Barbera stuff not out, which kind of is frustrating. So that's why.
The Evil Scientist had a book. The Gruesomes had a book.
Yeah.
And that was actually kind of rare. They were exceptions to the rule.
Mm-hmm. It seems kind of odd, but maybe there was flack or something, like they couldn't graduate to their own series or something like that in either case.
Yeah, well, eventually the Gruesomes were replaced by the Frankenstones.
Right.
And and the Frankenstones had an Igor character, but he was not Peter Lorre based.
I remember the Frankenstones, but I don't remember all the characters on it. I just remember like the father looking like this generic Frankenstein monster type. So it was kind of like more like the Munsters, I guess, for lack of a better comparison.
Yeah, Igor might have been just a one-off, but the Frankenstones appeared in several episodes.
Now, going back to your other book, the Marx Brothers one, was that a situation like with the Peter Lorre book that you were doing a lot of research just for the book, or it sounded like you were already doing it if you're contacting Ben and said, I have this idea for a book? So, did you have it already researched, being a Marx Brothers fan, or how did that come about?
Well, I've been a Marx Brothers fan since about age 10, and when I was in I think 1984, I went to an open house at Paul Weslowski's house, and for people who don't know, Paul Weslowski was the publisher and editor of the Fredonia Gazette, a magazine for the Marx Brothers, and he was one of the two foremost experts on the Marx Brothers. And Paul has this enormous collection of memorabilia. At the time, his entire place was just literally floor to ceiling. He had stuff on the ceiling because he had nowhere else to display it with Marx Brothers memorabilia. And he would have this open house, and Robert Bader every year would come, and he would show a reel of stuff that he discovered that previous year, and brought some cartoons. And I was like, and it just blew my mind. I had no idea that the Marx Brothers were in cartoons, and I just started finding these. Being open to something. I just started seeing them. I would see the Popeyes, like with Harpo, or then Chico making solo appearances, and Popeye doing Groucho, and I would just write them down, and just started to when DVDs came out, and Jerry Beck has his Cartoon Research garage sale. I was able to buy some of these Columbias, and then I would buy these DVD sets, and I would watch them, and then I'd discover other Marx Brothers cartoons hitherto unknown, at least to me. And so so I had quite a lot of research, and then Robert gave me his list. When I got my contract, Robert gave me his list, which was about 80 cartoons, some of which I had and some of which I didn't. And then the rest I just, I either found myself or I crowdsourced out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you do a book like this without crowdsourcing. I mean, God bless the internet.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like, because I didn't even know, it's like, in the case of that book, I knew there was a few Marx Brothers appearances, but I didn't think there was that many. So, and it is true, at least in one case that I'm thinking of, that Groucho did voice his own persona, correct?
Right. It was a Rankin Bass special called The Mad, Mad, Mad Comedians.
Okay.
And they did various sketches. Some of the comedians were still living, and they recreated their sketches. Some of them were not living, and Paul Frees did most of their voices. But so Groucho did a scene from the Marx Brothers' first Broadway show, I'll Say She Is. Mm-hmm. It's called the Napoleon Scene, and it's Napoleon going off to fight in Moscow, and Chico and Harpo and Zeppo are meanwhile making love to Josephine, and then Groucho comes back and discovers them, and I think it's great. I mean, first of all, it's the only time that one of two times that the Marx Brothers put a scene from I'll Say She Is on screen, and second of all, just the fact that it's a cartoon with makes it just indispensable.
Right. What was the other one you mentioned too? So.
Oh well, they did an adaptation of one of the scenes for a movie called The House That Shadows Built, which was a Paramount. It was a Paramount film that came out in 1930 or 31, and it was showcasing the releases of the coming year. Mm-hmm. And the Marx Brothers didn't have a scene for Monkey Business ready yet, so they just hauled out the old I'll Say She Is scene, mm-hmm. which they come out and it's all in rhyme, mm-hmm. and they go, "My name is Mr. Lee. My name is Sammy Lee. Do you have a job for me?" And the first time I saw this was on it was a special on network TV called The Movies, and it was over 2 or 3 nights, and I was like, oh my God, a Marx Brothers film I've never heard of, and my mind was just blown.
Now, did Groucho himself ever talk about that cartoon in the making of it, or was it just another job for Groucho?
I was unable to find anything he wrote or said about it. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to do the pilot for the Filmation series. Yeah. And he stepped down from that, and he recommended that it that the role be given to Pat Harrington Jr., which is what happened. But I've been unable to find anything about anything with the Rankin Bass stuff. We should ask.
Rick Goldschmidt. Yeah. I did have him on the podcast, so I should probably ask him about that. It is a fascinating special because they did try to get as many original voices as they could. So, go ahead.
I was going to say the prologue or the epilogue to my book is he had never, when he was 84 or something like that, he had never seen a Marx tune other than possibly his own. So Disney invited him to. Dave Smith, who is a Disney historian, invited him to the studio, and they screened Mickey's Hollywood premiere and a few of the other Disney ones, and he had never seen them before. Although he has, you can see it in pictures in his house. He had some of the cells that Walt Disney had given.
So he's aware of it.
He'd never seen the cartoons. And then Steve Stoliar told me this. After that, he would show these cartoons. They got in the rotation at the mansion when he would have, entertain all his showbiz friends. They would always put a couple of these cartoons up.
So he seemed to like the animation. Well, they had animation on the titles of some of the Marx Brothers films, so I guess they were always fans of animation, to your knowledge?
Harpo certainly loved cartoons. Groucho, I know, was a big fan of Beanie and Cecil, as was Harpo. Chico was too busy gambling and losing, and Steppo was too busy gambling and winning.
Any Gummo sightings or anything?
I was hoping there would be a Gummo, if only like an animated GIF, but I couldn't even find it. There's a couple of things. There's one cartoon from Pinky and the Brain where this is true. The suits at corporate wanted Tom Ruger and the guys doing Pinky and the Brain to add a third wheel to Pinky and the Brain, and so they did an episode goofing on this with and the third wheel was Larry from the Three Stooges in mouse form, and Larry's role in this series is he goes, "Hi, I'm Larry," and the Pinky and the Brain say to each other, "What do you want to do tonight, Brian and Larry?" And the Brain says, "What we always do, Pinky and Larry." Trying to take over the world. and so then at the end, it doesn't work out, and then Larry goes to work with Paul Simon. But then at the end, a new guy, he says, "Hi, I'm Zippo." So it would have been funny if they'd said Gummo, but...
Yeah. Of course, then Pinky and the Brain did Pinky Elmira and the Brain, so I guess they couldn't let a bad idea drop.
Lost that battle. Yeah. There's another cartoon, a Garfield cartoon, where John is filling out a form for computer dating, and it's this and that and the other thing. It's his favorite Marx Brother, and he writes down Zeppo, and I say in the book, wouldn't Gummo have been funnier?
Yes, I agree. But then nobody knows, unless you're a hardcore fan, who Gummo is.
Yeah.
Talk about that Filmation show. When you were working on the book, did you have access to the special? Now it's available like on YouTube or something, but there was a while there where it was kind of mystery, like it didn't really exist or something like that.
Well, the Filmation special, I think, has been available. I think you're thinking of the pilot.
Yeah, the pilot. Yeah,
that was. I'm sorry, that was. That was Filmation. That was rumored to not exist for a while. I had seen it. Paul Weslowski had it on tape, of course. Paul Weslowski has everything. And and now, of course, now it's out on DVD. But and then there's also another Marx Brothers pilot that was long rumored to not exist. and it's with Frank Ferrante as Groucho.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank Ferrante, for those who don't know, is the premier Groucho Marx interpreter. And he that was long rumored to not exist, and I got a copy of that, and for Paul's too, but then I got my copy for the book.
Mm-hmm. Oop, you're cutting out there a little bit.
It's not available, and it never will be because there's all kinds of lawsuits were spawned by that pilot.
Were there any cartoons in either book that you just could not find or see, but you made note of them anyway?
Yeah, Who's Zoo in Hollywood was missing. It has long been missing. It's a Columbia, and it's anthropomorphic animals. And Paul Weslowski, once again, he does not have the movie, but he does have a one sheet from the cartoon.
Oh, wow.
And it has the Marx Brothers as monkeys, and it has See No Evil, Chicos, See No Evil, Groucho, and Speak No Evil. And then I put in parentheses, Guess Who. And so that was one of the few Marx tunes that is not. All of the theatrical Laurie tunes are available, including one that Stan Freberg just done. Had just done a cartoon at Warner's, and then he went over to Columbia, and he did Cockatoos for Two. And Cockatoos for Two was long missing, but that turned up recently, and somebody restored it, and that's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
The Laurie tunes, there was, other than some of the commercials, there was a series, and the name slips my mind at the moment. It's about all these giant creepy crawlers. That's what it is. Creepy crawlers have disappeared. I suspect they were transferred onto flammable nitrate stock.
Mm-hmm.
But no, not really. Because they're just so terrible. It's really one of the worst series ever.
Well,
but that's about it.
Okay. And let me see what else. So, on that Marx Brothers pilot, going back to that, the Filmation one, Pat Harrington did the voice there for Groucho, and there's a story there about how he got the job, that he was fooling everybody, that they thought it really was Groucho. But he seemed to play that character again for the Vlasic Pickle guy, so he got a lot of mileage. Has he been the one that, other than Frank Ferrante, that's probably imitated Groucho more in animation than anybody else?
He probably, number of times, he might have it from just the Vlasic commercials, but Dawes Butler did a number of them. Dayton Allen did a number of them.
That's true.
Oddly, Mel Blanc only ever did it one time. Apparently he couldn't. He did Porky doing a bad imitation of Groucho. In the there's a cartoon where Elmer Fudd's on You Bet Your Life, and Bugs Bunny is playing Groucho, and that part of the cartoon, the voice is done by Dawes Butler.
I didn't know that. I just thought it was Mel. So,
No.
Huh. I'll have to watch that again. So,
Yeah.
Now on that book, are you still finding new appearances of Marx Brothers animation, or is that pretty much tapped out?
I found a few. It was funny because I turned in the book, and I was like, I really think I've gotten them all, and I almost said it in the like on the cover, like every Marx Brothers, and I was like, no, that's hubris. That's like asking for it, and then like a week went by, month went by, I didn't hear anything. 6 months went by, I didn't hear anything, and then I found out I missed, and this broke my heart. I missed a video review from Animaniacs with Maurice as Groucho. Maurice is the other guy who's played Groucho a lot. Maurice Lamarck. And then I found it's been a trickle, whereas the Peter Lorre has been just like a steady stream. My book was actually in a bottleneck at the typesetters, and for like 6 or 8 months, and I found a bunch of new cartoons while I was waiting, and I wasn't even looking. They found me, and so those actually made it into the book, and then
that's good.
Finally, I turned in the book. I finished the book, and then now I'm finding these other cartoons.
It's inevitable that'll happen. I guess you could do an update if you're doing a third volume of something. What can you mention if you're doing another volume on another celebrity for animation?
I don't have a contract yet, but yeah, I am doing another book in this series, and I think it'll probably I'll probably be able to get. I think Ben will probably approve it, hopefully, and I will be able in this book. I will be able to mention a lot of the Peter Lorres that I missed. So.
Okay, but you can't mention who you're thinking of doing for the next book?
Yeah, I'd rather. I'll tell you off. I'll tell you off the air. But
okay, all right.
Because, I don't have a contract.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, somebody beat you to it. It's like, well, I write for Beer Minute too, so no, I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's like I don't envy you in the slightest. It's like when I'm looking at your books, I'm like, wow. It's hard enough for me to do. I did Total Television book and I did a Patty Freeling book. And I pretty much saw probably like 95% of the cartoons because there are, amazingly, some of them missing in both cases. I think the Patty Freeling is pretty much close to 100%, but there's some oddball Saturday morning shows that I couldn't see all the episodes, and I said, well, I don't need to see all of them, but, so if you've been able to see all of them and document all of them, because it's like, I can't even think, I'm like thinking about when I'm reading your book, and I'm like, was there like a Peter Lorre character in like Underdog or something like that, and it's like, I don't know, because I'm not watching it for that,
Yeah. And I've heard that, but I think I checked that out, and I did not believe him to be based on Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
But I don't
if something stands out, I'd definitely tell you, but I don't think they've had a character like that in any of those type of cartoons, but it's like, it's just stranger things have happened, but... I
mean, nobody can say, oh, this is every cartoon of X, but, because nobody's seen every cartoon except Jerry Beck.
Right.
And, but, so all you can do is do your best and just try to get most of them.
Right. Now, I should know this, but your books don't say anything beyond this. It says you're an award-winning filmmaker and a cartoonist. So, what have you done that I may know about?
Probably nothing. I made a bunch of movies. Most of them are political satires, and this was mostly during the Bush era. And I actually won an award for one. It was called Duck Soup: The Rest of Your Life, and I took footage from Duck Soup, and then I intercut it with a cartoon that I made with Nixon and Rumsfeld, and the Nixon and Rumsfeld thing was word for word taken from real life. Nixon said to Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld was an up and coming young Republican at that point. I think he was at OMB or something, and so Nixon calls him in to discuss his career, and he says, I think this is my opinion is that you would be a cabinet officer. And then I intercut this with Groucho saying, would you like to be Secretary of War? And then cut back to Nixon and Rumsfeld. He says, except I wouldn't put you in defense. And then they cut back to Groucho and Chico, and I think we should have a standing army. And anyway, that won an award at the Fredonia Marxonia Festival and at SUNY Fredonia in New York State. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that. The cartoons were mostly clip art cartoons. I've done a few cartoons on Medium that I've drawn poorly, and but I've done literally thousands of clip art cartoons on a couple of different sites.
Okay.
And most of them are political, but there's a whole wide range of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Because you mentioned it, I assume. Well, I'll just ask it this way. So, what is your favorite Marx Brothers film?
Horse Feathers.
Oh, wow. I thought you might say Duck Soup because of all the quotations from it. But
no, I mean, Horse Feathers to me is just pure joy. I mean, Duck Soup. If you stop and think about it, it's really dark. I mean, Groucho's killing his own men, and I mean, it shouldn't work at all. That it works so well is marvelous. But I just love Horse Feathers. That was one of my early discoveries of the Marx Brothers, and it's still my favorite today.
That's cool. I think I have to say Duck Soup, but or maybe Night at the Opera, but it waffles depending on my mood on those two. But I'm one of these weird ones that I can appreciate all the later ones. There's some people that go, I can't watch anything room service or later or whatever. It's like, I like Love Happy. I think it's all right. There's nothing wrong with it. I think if you're a Groucho fan, you're more disappointed. Yeah. If you're a Harpo
My
fan,
definition of a Marx Brothers fan is someone who likes the Marx Brothers but hates all of their movies. It's like, well, the Coconuts and Animal Crackers are too primitive, and then the later Paramounts are too wacky, and then Night of the Opera they're tamed down and toned down. They just all they do is kvetch and complain about their movies. It's like, well, don't watch them. I mean, I for one love room service. I mean, I think I love Go West, which is just reviled by a lot of people. If any other comedy team had made Go West, it would be considered a classic. And in fact, Laurel and Hardy did make it, and it is a classic. It is considered a classic.
And then going over to Peter Lorre, do you have a favorite film there of him?
Well, the nostalgic favorite is Arsenic No Lace. Mm-hmm. Then I also love The Maltese Falcon.
Yeah. Casablanca.
Casablanca. I love that. He's only in like the first reel, but
that's true.
I was just reading something, and they said, he really, you can feel his presence throughout the whole picture, even though he's disappeared early on.
Right. And is there like this is more for Peter Lorre than maybe Marx Brothers. Is there like a guilty pleasure one that you like that's not very good, but you say, I like it, you know?
I do like the Corman films, God help me.
And yeah, those are entertaining. I mean, the last time I think I saw one, I always forget the titles for what happens, you know. So I'll just say what happens. It's the one where he gets sealed behind the wall. So it's like Haunt of Horrors.
Telltale Heart.
Oh, okay. Is that what that one is? Because I always get those all mixed up. Yeah, they're just the Corman films, and they have Vincent Price, and they have Peter Lorre, and some have Karloff, and some
bad adaptations of Poe.
Or basically no adaptation of Poe.
Well, just take the title.
You know, because I had to write an article once about that, and that's when I realized it's like, wow, other than maybe like the opening line of the poem, there's nothing to do with ravens in this one, or pits or pendulums. I think there's more pits and pendulums in Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine than in the actual pit and the pendulum. But
I think some of those movies may have been written by Francis Ford Coppola.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know he did direct Dementia 13, which was a Corman film.
Yeah, Targets.
Well, Targets was a Bogdanovich film, Peter Bogdanovich.
Oh, you're right.
But it's Dementia 13. That's the early
Dementia 13.
The early Coppola one, you know, and he likes to say that that's his first film more than. Apparently, he worked on a kind of cheesy porno film prior to that, but he doesn't list that. So, you know, we're kind of going off the mark here, but so other than, you know, a proposed third volume in this animation series, is there any other projects you're working on, books or otherwise?
Well, I'm working on 2 books in the series, sort of concurrently. One I plan to put out before the other one, and then after that, I don't really know. But I mean, that's like the next 4 years of my life. So.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, how long does it take you to do one of these books? It's like because I don't know how long it took you to do the Marx Brothers one, and it's like it just appeared, and I said, "Oh, that's kind of a cool book. I don't have that." You know?
Well, the Marx Brothers book took me 30 years to research, 6 months to write, and then it was my first book, so there was quite a bit of editing, and then it went to the typesetters, and so that took 11 months, that whole thing, from the time I turned it in to the time it actually came out. So that was about 17 months. The Peter Lorre book took a year to write. I had done a tiny amount of research before I pitched it to Ben. So basically, you know, almost done. And then so that took a year to write, and then over a year to actually bring the book out, and then we delayed the release to July to wave it around to the reviewers.
Oh, okay. That was one thing I was wondering, because I mean I was able to secure a copy, but that's because I work with Ben too, and you know I knew about it, and you know
you're an important man.
Yes, thank you. And this podcast will definitely air before July, so this is good timing. So it's like because we do record them a little bit in advance, but it'll be definitely up.
Let's pretend we're going out live.
Yeah, okay. The pandemic is over. Yay!
Oh man, I was in a crowd today. It was great.
It's future podcast.
I hugged somebody. I hugged a stranger.
Actually, I do have a question about this. This is kind of interesting because they don't really talk about it, and I'm kind of piecing it together. So on the 1918 pandemic, I was saying, did they release films during that time? I thought they did, and so I pulled out the films of Charlie Chaplin, and it dropped to like nothing. He put out like 2 films that year, and then 2 films in 1919. So he must have stopped doing anything during that time too. And I looked up a Buster Keaton book, and yeah, his output dropped significantly too for about 2 years. But neither book mentioned the flu pandemic at all. And now I know Marx Brothers were active during that time. They weren't making films yet, except they made that ill-fated missing film Humor Risk, which I think probably...
That was like 2023.
Yeah, so that postdates the pandemic. But did Groucho or any of the Marx Brothers ever talk about the pandemic in any of their interviews?
It was a big thing to them. They were doing the Cinderella Girl, or also known as the Street Cinderella, written by Joe Swerling, who wrote Guys and Dolls and Gone with the Wind and a ton of Hollywood movies. But they were doing that, and I want to say they were in Michigan. They were, and because of the pandemic, the theater could only sell every other seat in every other row. Oh, wow. So they're playing to this, what's that, like a quarter of the house. Wow. And so they're not making any money.
Right.
And they've got small houses, and people tend to not laugh when they're seated apart from each other. If you get people in a big crowd, they'll laugh at funny things, but they may not laugh if they're spread out. And so that show was a big failure for them.
Wow. I never knew that. It's amazing that they continued on. I guess they Trico needed the money, huh? Yeah. I won't do the Gilbert Gottfried imitation. Anyway, but is that really the case? Is that the show must go on and they needed the money and all that stuff is why they would continue to do that, even putting their own lives in jeopardy?
Yeah. Well, they did. They needed the money. They were hungry, young and hungry performers.
Yeah.
They wanted to get their names out there, and they probably were forced to by Albee and the other vaudeville theater owners. Yeah. It depended on where you were. I mean, some cities like Baltimore had almost no restrictions, and then some cities had very, very, very strict restrictions.
Well, that sounds like now. So,
yeah,
I watched a documentary on this on YouTube. Anybody can, and they're saying that pandemic tended to hit younger people more than this one seems to be aging older. I don't know if that's still the case, but I mean, they're saying people between age 20 and 40, which is roughly where the Marx Brothers were, so I guess they weren't worried about it too much. But you didn't also hear about many celebrities dying back then from it, so I don't know. Maybe they were just lucky because they kept traveling around, beating the odds or something, because a lot of this documentary also said a lot of the pandemic went overseas because of World War I and stuff like that, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather was in the Army. This was while World War I was on. He never got over there, but he was in, I think, Fort Devens in Massachusetts. And he woke up, he was like 20. He woke up one morning and the guy in the bunk next to him was dead.
Ooh.
So he rolls over to tell the guy on the other side of him, and that guy's dead.
Wow.
My grandfather obviously did not die.
Wow, what a story. Wow. Anyway, on that note, I wanted to ask you, how people can get in contact with you if they have like some sort of, animation or otherwise, sequences of Marx Brothers hidden in a vault or something like that, or Peter Lorre or any of the other people that you're going to do, how would they get in contact with you?
I am on Facebook, Matthew Hahn. I run a page for the animated Marx Brothers and a page for the animated Peter Lorre. And I'm also on Twitter both for both books and Instagram for both books. So people, and they can write the animated Marx Brothers. I have the animated Marx Brothers at gmail.com and the animated Peter Lorre at gmail.com. So a lot of different ways you can reach out and touch me.
Okay, very good. Except do social distancing.
But it maintains 6 feet
Yes.
at all times.
And then to order your books, I assume it's through Amazon or bearmanormedia.com in both cases?
Yeah. Animated Marx Brothers is on a wide variety of platforms. And if you shop around, if you're looking for bargains, you can sometimes find it very cheaply in various permutations like Kindle and the audiobook you can get for really short money. But you can always go to Amazon or Bear Manor.
Okay.
It's bearmanormedia.com, we should mention.
Yes. bearmanormedia.com. Yes. And tell Ben you heard it on the Fun Ideas podcast.
Tell him Groucho sent you.
Thank you for listening, and thank you, Matthew Hahn, for being my special guest. Matthew's new book that he alluded to will be about the animated appearances of the universal monsters such as Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman. Episode number 77 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Headed home to a cardboard hut with duct tape doors. At the price I'm paying, be glad it isn't yours. Now get up, Crab Mountain, get up. 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 That mountain of crab. And don't fall back. Don't fall back. Don't fall back.